Chapter 3630, Chapter 704, Phoenix Rain's Choice. Chapter 3630, Chapter 704, Phoenix Rain's Choice. Chapter 704, Phoenix Rain's Choice. Redstone Hotel, top floor VIP room. Upon hearing the old man's question, everyone at the table couldn't help but gaze toward Phoenix Rain. Among them, Illusory Words, a vice guild leader of Crimson Emperor, couldn't help but grow worried as she looked at her good friend Phoenix Rain. "Rain, stop angering Elder Mist any further," Illusory Words whispered to Phoenix Rain. Most of the people present only knew the old man as the Tier 6 Alliance's founder. However, as a vice guild leader of Crimson Emperor, a veteran super guild, Illusory Words was well aware of the old man's true identity. The old man went by the name of Hidden Mist in God's domain, and he was one of the founding elders of mythology, one of the 5 great super guild. If not for Hidden Mist having a falling out with another founding elder and withdrawing from mythology many years ago, mythology would have long become the strongest guild in the world rather than just one of the 5 strongest. Meanwhile, throughout the years Hidden Mist had operated behind the scenes, not only did he nurture many famous experts, but he also gained the full support of more than 10 corporations. It was also due to the financial support of these corporations that the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion could have its current strength, and the many Tier 6 experts present could have the legendary equipment currently in their possession. If Phoenix Rain angered Hidden Mist, she could lose her standing in God's domain and the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. It should be known that the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's experts didn't just sign a God's domain contract with the pavilion. They had also signed a God's domain contract with the corporations backing it. Hence, even if the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion disbanded and merged into Zero Wing, unless the pavilion's many experts wished to lose their existing weapons and equipment, they would still need to listen to the arrangements of those corporations. If it were a few years ago, Phoenix Rain would have indeed had the final say in all matters in the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. This was because the corporations that supported the pavilion also supported Phoenix Rain. However, after the corporations behind Hidden Mist had invested in the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, Phoenix Rain could no longer decide the fate of the pavilion's many experts all by herself. "I know you are striving to secure a better future for our native Tier 6 experts, Elder Mist," Phoenix Rain said calmly. "But don't you think it is a little too much to ask all of us here to surrender half of our territories and sign a lifetime contract to obey those people? And what do we get in return? Some security and the ability to enter the greater God's domain? On the other hand, if we join Zero Wing, while we might not be able to resist the outside powers right away, we won't have any trouble defending our existing territories. As we gain more and more Tier 6 experts, we can even expand our reach to the outside world." In reality, there were 2 reasons Phoenix Rain had chosen to attend the Tier 6 Alliance's meeting today. Firstly, it was to announce her transfer to Zero Wing. Secondly, it was to recruit some experts to join Zero Wing with her. That way, she could have more influence in Zero Wing. "I don't blame you for having such thoughts, but that is simply because you don't understand how strong the outside powers are," Hidden Mist said, sighing as he looked at Phoenix Rain. Then, resolutely, he continued, "If you insist on joining Zero Wing, I won't stop you. However, you are not allowed to take any part of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion with you. You will also have to announce your retirement as the pavilion's guild leader, and 9 Dragons Emperor will take your position. Otherwise, you and your confidants will have to surrender all of the weapons and equipment you have gained because of the corporations and compensate the corporations for all the potions and resources they have supplied to you." Following Hidden Mist's words, 9 Dragons Emperor, who was in his late 30s and seated in the 8th seat, stood up with a smile. "Phoenix Rain doesn't hold absolute authority in the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, Elder Mist. I can persuade the shareholders and Grand Elders to relieve her of her position," 9 Dragons Emperor said to Hidden Mist before glancing at Phoenix Rain. "Also, Phoenix Rain's weapons and equipment aren't her personal belongings. Those are legendary equipment gained through countless sacrifices from the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's experts. Phoenix Rain can leave the pavilion, but she must surrender all of her legendary equipment and fragmented legendary items first." Upon hearing 9 Dragons Emperor's words, many of those present couldn't help but look at Phoenix Rain with some sympathy. 9 Dragons Emperor had always been dissatisfied with working under Phoenix Rain as a vice guild leader of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. In addition, He had the support of nearly half of the pavilion's members. If he were to take the initiative to persuade the pavilion's shareholders and grand elders, with the support of the corporations behind Hidden Mist, he could indeed deprive Phoenix Rain's authority and confiscate her items. Meanwhile, once Phoenix Rain lost her legendary equipment, even if she was a Tier 6 expert, it would be long before she could make any waves in God's domain. Her value to Zero Wing would also plummet. 9 Dragons Emperor. How can you do this to your guild leader? Illusory Words, seated in the 4th seat, said with a frown. The new expansion pack is just about to launch, and it is the best time for us to make further improvements before the world gate opens. Are you trying to eliminate Rain completely by having her surrender all her items now? This is her decision. I didn't force her into it, 9 Dragons Emperor said contemptuously. If she doesn't want such a fate, she can always choose not to join Zero Wing and continue being the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's guild leader. You. Illusory Words glared at 9 Dragons Emperor, a flame of wrath burning in her eyes. Hidden Mist merely sought to dissuade Phoenix Rain from leaving the Tier 6 alliance, yet 9 Dragons Emperor sought to take her life. I can surrender my position as guild leader. I can also return all of the weapons and equipment the corporations have given me and compensate the corporations for the potions and resources I have used. However, I will not hand over the guild towns and real estate under my name, Phoenix Rain said firmly to Hidden Mist. Are you truly going to destroy all of your effort and future for Zero Wing? Hidden Mist asked in a colder tone. I have already made a promise to guild leader Black Flame, Phoenix Rain said with a casual smile. She paid no attention whatsoever to the change in Hidden Mist's tone. God's Domain's various guild and NPC cities were necessary to pay for a guild's operating costs. If Zero Wing wished to develop rapidly in their God's Domain, the guild must have some real estate in the various guild and NPC cities. It was also the bottom line she had set for herself in her partnership with Shafong. If she couldn't even keep this bottom line, she'd be too ashamed to occupy a vice-guild leader position in Zero Wing. Good. You best not regret your decision, Hidden Mist said as he took one last look at Phoenix Rain. Take your leave, then. The Tier 6 Alliance still has other important matters to discuss. Hearing this, Phoenix Rain got out of her seat and took her leave without hesitation, her actions surprising many present. They never thought Phoenix Rain would be willing to abandon her position as the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's guild leader, discarding many years of her effort. Meanwhile, following Phoenix Rain's departure, 9 Dragons Emperor smiled even more jovially than before. In reality, 9 Dragons Emperor and Hidden Mist had been the ones to initiate the abrupt meeting today. Meanwhile, apart from questioning Phoenix Rain, the meeting was held to discuss an even more important subject, the powers outside their God's Domain. More specifically, after learning of their God's Domain's most recent expansion pack, the outside powers have decided they would forcibly send a batch of players to their God's Domain to compete for the taboo dungeons. Phoenix Rain's departure from the Tier 6 Alliance today would thoroughly eliminate any opportunities she had to make a comeback in God's Domain. TL notes. 1. Veteran Super Guild. I'm not sure if this description of Crimson Emperor is accurate. In the main story, Crimson Emperor was described as a veteran super first-rate guild. It might have advanced into a super guild at some point, though. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3631, Chapter 705 Outside Powers Arrive. Chapter 3631, Chapter 705 Outside Powers Arrive. Chapter 705, Outside Powers Arrive. God's Domain, Ruined Mountain Range. After waiting for one natural day, many players promptly logged back into God's Domain. In addition, many powers and independent experts swarmed to the ruined temple with their respective teams, causing the originally crowded place to become even more crowded. Is that the taboo mode dungeon mentioned in the Ancient Glory expansion pack? So, this is the first taboo mode dungeon? I can't believe there are 2 level 220, Tier 6 hero NPCs guarding its entrant. Just how powerful are the monsters inside? I heard that this taboo mode dungeon was originally a level 210 God mode team dungeon in the ruined temple, so its difficulty should be above God mode. Many expert players continued to gather in front of the ruined library in the ruined temple's library area. When these experts saw the 1,000-meter-tall sealed crimson portal at the library's entrance, they couldn't help but be shocked. In God's domain, most Team Dungeons entrance portals would only be several meters in height. Even 500-man Team Dungeons would only have their entrance portals measure about a dozen meters in height. This was everyone's first time seeing a Team Dungeon with a 1,000-meter-tall entrance portal. Although a Team Dungeon's entrance portal wouldn't necessarily reflect its difficulty, everyone present could clearly feel the oppressive mana radiating from the ruined library's portal. The radiated mana was so oppressive that many players found themselves suffocated. It felt as if they weren't standing before an inanimate portal but a living creature instead. More specifically, it felt like they stood before a Tier 6 god. Because of this, Tier 5 players found it difficult to even get close to the portal. While everyone was observing the dungeon's entrance, a Tier 5 ranger suddenly exclaimed, "Quick, look! It's the 5 great super guilds teams." Subsequently, the crowd gathered in the fountain plaza before the ruined library could be seen stepping aside to make way for a 100-man team. The guild emblems worn by the members of this team consisted of 5 types, indicating that this was a team formed by 5 guilds. Of the members of this team, even the weakest was a Tier 5 expert radiating an aura that could closely match the average Tier 6 expert, and even the weakest piece of equipment found on this player was at the fragmented legendary rank. In addition, there were as many as 50 bona fide Tier 6 experts in this team, and every one of them was equipped with at least one piece of legendary equipment. When these 50 Tier 6 players stood together, ordinary Tier 5 experts dared not stand anywhere near them. As expected of the 5 great super guilds, they can actually afford to mobilize 50 Tier 6 experts to this dungeon. This is probably as many Tier 6 experts as all other powers have combined. It seems I have severely underestimated them in the past. Ji Luorong, who had just come online, couldn't help but be astonished as she looked at the team the 5 great super guilds had sent to raid the Taboo Mode dungeon. 50 Tier 6 experts. That averages to 10 per guild. No wonder even veteran super guilds dare not provoke the 5 great super guilds, Crimson Mist said with a hint of fear in her eyes. Thankfully, we never seriously offended any of them in the past. Otherwise, we really would have been erased from God's domain. The 5 great super guilds have occupied most of our God's domain's resources, so it's unsurprising for them to have such a foundation, Shifeng said, not particularly surprised by the 5 great super guilds' strength. In his previous life, because he had activated the World Gate quite a few years in advance, the various powers had to interact with the greater God's domain before they could develop strong foundations. As a result, they barely had any Tier 6 experts and had a very hard time surviving through the initial phase of the World Gate's opening. However, in the current timeline, the 5 great super guilds had already been operating in God's domain for 10 years. They would have to be wasting the resources they had been occupying if they couldn't even produce 50 Tier 6 experts after all these years. "Do you think we can secure the first clear, guild leader?" Ji Luorong worriedly asked as she looked at the partially unsealed entrance portal. Team Dungeon raids placed a heavy emphasis on a team's overall strength. Meanwhile, even if they included all of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilions and Eternal Glory's Tier 6 members, Zero Wing would only have 10 Tier 6 experts. Even if all 10 of these Tier 6 experts possessed strength surpassing the 10 Saints, it shouldn't be enough to bridge the gap between Zero Wing's team and the 5 great super guilds team. Not to mention, only 2 of Eternal Glory's Tier 6 experts were present. Crimson Mask, another vice commander of Eternal Glory, was occupied with a quest and couldn't make it for the raid. It should be known that Zero Wing was responsible for activating the Taboo Mode ruined library. It'd be a huge embarrassment for Zero Wing if the 5 great super guilds ended up securing the ruined library's first clear. Just as Ji Luorong finished speaking, another commotion occurred in the Fountain Plaza. Before anyone could react, a mighty pressure descended upon everyone in the plaza, making everyone feel like the sky was falling. Boom! Subsequently, the 100,000-plus Tier 5 experts in the plaza started to collapse to the ground one after another. Although a small minority of Tier 5 experts managed to stay standing, their complexions had turned extremely pale. How is this possible? Ji Luorong couldn't believe her eyes as she looked in the plaza's direction. At this time, a team of 100 Tier 6 experts could be seen walking across the plaza. Every member of this team was equipped with a fragmented legendary equipment set, and they were all at level 215 and above. In addition, even the weakest radiated an aura stronger than the 10 saints. Who are these people? At this time, even the 5 great super guilds experts were in great shock. Not only had they never seen or heard of any of these 100 Tier 6 experts before, but these players also wore a never-before-seen three-eyed guild emblem. Meanwhile, shortly after this 100-man Tier 6 team appeared, another 100-man team arrived at the plaza. Although this 100-man team did not radiate as strong of an aura as the team with the three-eyed emblem, it similarly had 100 Tier 6 experts equipped with a uniform fragmented legendary equipment set. The team did not look like it was from any power in God's domain. What is going on? Where did all these Tier 6 experts come from? Crimson Mist muttered, confusion coloring her eyes as she looked at the 2 Tier 6 teams. I know every power that has a Tier 6 expert, but I have never heard of any guild having 100 Tier 6 experts. Meanwhile, after observing the 2 teams for a while, Shifeng said, they should be from powers outside of our God's domain. Follow current novels on Top Novelful. CM if you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 36-32, Chapter 706, Difference Between Powers. Chapter 36-32, Chapter 706, Difference Between Powers. Chapter 706, Difference Between Powers. Outside powers. When Ji Luorong heard Shifeng's answer, she couldn't help but look at the 2 Tier 6 teams in the plaza with renewed shock. Is this the strength of the powers outside our God's domain? Ji Luorong did not doubt Shifeng's statement. After all, she had never seen or heard of any of the 200 level 215 plus Tier 6 experts who had just arrived at the plaza. Not to mention, Shifeng had a much better understanding regarding the powers outside of their God's domain than even Phoenix Rain. Since Shifeng had deemed these 2 Tier 6 teams to be from an outside power, it should almost certainly be the case. Only, weren't these outside powers a little too frightening? 100 Tier 6 experts. This was a number that could already match the total number of Tier 6 experts that existed in their entire God's domain. Yet, each of the 2 outside powers that had shown up here had arrived with 100 Tier 6 experts. Moreover, even the weakest of these Tier 6 experts could rival the 10 saints in strength. Wouldn't our God's domain be finished once the world gate opens? Guild leader Black Flame? Purple Eye asked nervously as she looked at the 200 Tier 6 foreign experts in the plaza. While Purple Eye was confident she could win a fight against any of these foreign Tier 6 experts thanks to her secret treasure set and mana purification technique, the other party had an overwhelming number of Tier 6 experts. She doubted she could escape with her life if she had to go up against such overwhelming odds. Needless to say, the chances of the average native Tier 6 expert surviving against these foreign experts were even lower. It should be known that the world gate remained closed thus far, and the outside world's players still couldn't freely enter their God's domain. Yet, the outside world's powers could already dispatch such an invincible force into their God's domain. At this point, Purple Eye couldn't even begin to imagine what would happen once the world gate opened, and the outside world's players could freely enter their God's domain. How were any of their God's domain's powers supposed to survive? Don't worry. Seeing the anxiety on Purple Eye, Shifeng explained, as a protection mechanism for native players, every God's domain will suppress all non-native players who enter it, and the higher a player's tier, the stronger the suppression they will face. So, while these foreign Tier 6 experts might have powerful auras, their basic attributes are actually much weaker than the average Tier 6 player. They're just slightly stronger than Tier 5 players and can only be considered as pseudo-Tier 6 players. Moreover, foreign Tier 6 players cannot manipulate the mana inside our God's domain, they can only utilize their own mana. If you were to fight them, you can easily take on 100 of them by yourself. Every God's domain came with a powerful protection mechanism for its native players. This mechanism existed to maximize the survival rate of civilizations newly introduced to the greater God's domain and allow everyone to climb to the apex. Or, at the very least, it could ensure a civilization wouldn't get eliminated as soon as it was introduced to the greater god's domain. Of course, there were always exceptions. If a power destroyed a god's domain directly, the players and powers inhabiting said god's domain would immediately cease to exist. Only, very few powers possessed such frightening strength in the greater god's domain. Meanwhile, Ji Luorong and the others couldn't help but sigh in relief when they heard Shifeng's explanation. They had much to lose in God's domain. It would be absolutely terrible for them if their God's domain were to become another civilization's possession as soon as the world gate opened. Be that as it may, we can only stay holed up in our God's domain. We won't be able to leave at all. While Ji Luorong and the others were sighing in relief, a team of several dozen players approached them. Meanwhile, walking in the lead of this team was Phoenix Rain. Upon seeing Phoenix Rain, Ji Luorong and the others couldn't help but be dumbfounded. "Did you all get robbed, Big Sis Rain?" Ji Luorong couldn't help but ask when she saw the present state of Phoenix Rain and her teammates. At this time, the only item in Phoenix Rain's possession that remained the same was her staff. Apart from that, all of the equipment she previously wore had been swapped out for level 200 epic equipment. It was like she had transformed from an empress to a peasant. Moreover, it wasn't just Phoenix Rain that had undergone such a transformation. Blue Phoenix and the other Dragon Phoenix Pavilion members on Phoenix Rain's team had also lost all of their fragmented legendary items. Although level 200 epic weapons and equipment was by no means terrible in God's domain, they still shouldn't be the only items that a super first-rate guild's main force members had equipped. After all, even in first-rate guilds, every main force member would have at least one or two fragmented legendary items. If not for Phoenix Rain still having her legendary staff, the overall strength of Phoenix Rain's team wouldn't even meet the standard of a first-rate team. "We weren't robbed," Blue Phoenix, who stood behind Phoenix Rain, said with a wry smile. "It's just that the guild's grand elders and shareholders have all switched to Nine Dragons Emperor's side. To ensure that we could keep the guild towns and real estate we had promised to Zero Wing, Big Sis Rain had no choice but to return all of the weapons and equipment that belonged to the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion. On top of that, Big Sis Rain also ended up owing a huge sum of money. Although Blue Phoenix spoke in a casual and teasing manner, everyone who heard her could tell she was greatly disheartened. After all, how could she not be disheartened? She had previously been equipped with weapons and equipment that were among the best in God's domain. Yet, now, she had lost all those things, effectively losing years of her effort. "It's fine. We can simply get more weapons and equipment," Phoenix Rain said nonchalantly. "So long as we have those real estate, we can always rise back again." "You make it sound as if it's easy, Rain," Illusory Words, wearing a black cloak that failed to hide her seductive figure, said as she rolled her eyes at Phoenix Rain. Then, she bluntly continued, "Have you forgotten how much you have gone through to get your hands on those 3 pieces of legendary equipment? Even with the Tier 6 Alliance's assistance, it took you several years to gather the necessary materials to repair those equipment. Moreover, that was back when the various powers were in the midst of exploring God's domain's maps. Now that 99% of God's domain's maps have been explored, do you think it'll be as easy to get your hands on 3 pieces of legendary equipment, and compatible ones at that? Not to mention, Zero Wing wouldn't necessarily be grateful for your sacrifice. On the other hand, if you were still the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's guild leader right now, you could have gotten in touch with the Dragon Hunting Temple by now. That's an upper-ranking hegemonic power we are talking about. Exploring the Taboo Mode dungeon with such a power will be infinitely better than doing so with a guild that barely has any Tier 6 players." Illusory Words' words were sharp, especially when she mentioned Zero Wing. Her eyes focused on Shifeng, and her gaze had a cold glint. After learning of the Tier 6 Alliance's true trump card in the latest meeting, Illusory Words felt that Phoenix Rain's decision to join Zero Wing was utterly foolish. Unfortunately, the only thing she could do to try to rectify the decision was to persuade Phoenix Rain to apologize to Hidden Mist. With how highly the old man valued her, Phoenix Rain should have no trouble rejoining the Tier 6 Alliance so long as she voiced her regret. While Illusory Words was speaking, another 100-man team arrived at the plaza. Although not composed entirely of Tier 6 experts, this 100-man team still had 30 Tier 6 experts. Meanwhile, leading the team was a one-eyed middle-aged man who was a level 217, tier 6 Guardian Knight wearing a dragon-shaped guild emblem, and standing next to him was 9 Dragons Emperor, a level 211, tier 6 ranger. At this time, all 70 of the level 210, tier 5 experts standing behind 9 Dragons Emperor were equipped with a uniform fragmented legendary equipment set, and they radiated auras that could closely rival tier 6 players. Although the whole 100-man team was not a match for the 2 tier 6 teams from before, it could closely match the 5 great super guilds team. That's the fragmented legendary basic battle array equipment set provided by the Dragon Hunting Temple. Although not as strong as the 2 Outside Powers advanced version, it is still a one-of-a-kind in our God's domain, Illusory Words said as she looked at 9 Dragons Emperor's team. Then, she returned her gaze to Phoenix Rain and sighed, saying, "If you hadn't withdrawn from the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, that equipment could have been yours." Fragmented legendary equipment sets that came attached with battle arrays were impossible to find in their God's domain. Yet, Phoenix Rain had abandoned the opportunity to secure one of these sets for herself just to join Zero Wing, a guild that barely had any fame until recently. Zero Wing is indeed incapable of securing compatible legendary equipment currently, Shifeng said, chuckling when he saw Illusory Words voicing grievances on Phoenix Rain's behalf. But if it's only fragmented legendary battle array equipment sets, Zero Wing has some. Follow current novels on Top Novelful. CM if you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 36-33, Chapter 707, Beyond Hegemonics. Chapter 36-33, Chapter 707, Beyond Hegemonics. Chapter 707, Beyond Hegemonics. You have some? Illusory Words couldn't help but look at Shifeng contemptuously when she heard his words. Why don't you take them out and show them to us, then? As wealthy as the 5 great super guilds were, even they probably didn't have a single fragmented legendary battle array equipment set. Needless to say, it would be even more impossible for Zero Wing, an upstart guild that had merely integrated several first-rate guilds, to have any. In Illusory Words' opinion, Shifeng was merely putting on an act. Those battle array sets can't exhibit their potential without sufficient scale, guild leader. If you want to raise our overall strength, it'll be enough to just give each of us a few fragmented legendary items, Phoenix Rain advised. Phoenix Rain similarly did not think Zero Wing would have any fragmented legendary battle array equipment sets. But to save Shifeng from embarrassment, she decided to offer him an alternative solution that she knew he could fulfill. After all, Shifeng had previously killed a bunch of experts from the Flower of 7 Sins and obtained their equipment. The 100 Flower Palace and the Star Alliance were also first-rate guilds with powerful foundations before they joined Zero Wing. So, Zero Wing should have no trouble coming up with enough fragmented legendary items to arm a small team of several dozen. Blue Phoenix also hurriedly nodded in agreement. Unlike Illusory Words, Blue Phoenix knew that Zero Wing had treated them wonderfully thus far, and they'd be very ungrateful if they tried to make trouble for Zero Wing. "You don't need to turn down my offer," Shifeng said as he initiated a trade with Phoenix Rain and started placing Eternal Magic Armor equipment sets into the trade window one after another. Melting Flame and the others had worked tirelessly to produce these Eternal Magic Armor sets, and Shifeng had brought a little over 50 sets back with him this time. Although it wasn't enough to equip a 100-man team, only 20 sets were needed to activate a small bronze magic array. Guild leader. You really don't have tea. When Phoenix Rain saw that Shifeng was trading equipment to her, her immediate reaction was to try to stop him. However, when she got a closer look at the Eternal Magic Armor set, her words got caught in her mouth. Each part of the Eternal Magic Armor set was covered in runes that combined to form a self-contained structure. At a glance, the runes obviously formed a battle array, and it was a battle array of high quality at that. Simply the mana the Eternal Magic Armor set carried was no less than the battle array sets of the 2 foreign Tier 6 teams. As a vice guild leader of Zero Wing, you will be needed to lead your own exploration team in the future. So, take these Eternal Magic Armor sets as a welcome gift, Shifeng said to Phoenix Rain in a private chat as he traded 40 Eternal Magic Armor sets to her without hesitation. Although Zero Wing isn't at the level of Apex Powers, We aren't your average power in the greater god's domain, either. 40 bronze battle array sets. Phoenix Rain nearly exclaimed out loud when she saw the eternal magic armor sets Shifeng had just traded to her. What did you just say, Rain? Bronze battle array sets. And 40 of them. Illusory words couldn't help but grow confused as she looked at Phoenix Rain. In response to Illusory words' confusion, Phoenix Rain shared the eternal magic armor set stats with her. Of course, she had only done so because she trusted Illusory words and wished to let the other party understand more about Zero Wing. Meanwhile, after seeing the eternal magic armor set statistics, Illusory words couldn't help but be dumbfounded. It should be known that the two foreign Tier 6 teams were backed by conglomerates. Even then, they could only equip themselves with advanced battle array sets. As for the Dragon Hunting Temple, it wouldn't even dare to dream of owning bronze battle array sets. Yet, not only did Zero Wing possess bronze battle array sets, but Shifeng had even gifted 40 sets to Phoenix Rain at no cost. Just what kind of foundation must Zero Wing possess to be so generous? Rain, aren't we best friends? Can you tell me what kind of power Zero Wing is? Illusory words whispered to Phoenix Rain. At this time, Illusory words could no longer see Zero Wing as a native power of their god's domain. Or, more specifically, she refused to believe this to be the case. After all, if even the 5 great super guilds didn't have such a powerful foundation, there was no way a native upstart guild could have it. Seeing the urgency on Illusory words' face, Phoenix Rain pretended to hesitate for a moment before saying, I can't give you a precise answer. I can only say that Zero Wing is a power above hegemons. A power above hegemons? Illusory words couldn't help but take another look at Shifeng when she heard Phoenix Rain's answer. Although her heart was still full of doubts, it was a fact that Phoenix Rain had received 40 eternal magic armor sets from Shifeng. Despite being an upper-ranking hegemonic power, even the Dragon Hunting Temple could not get its hands on a treasure like the eternal magic armor set. This must mean that only the powers rumored to stand above upper-ranking hegemonic powers in the outside world could access treasures like the eternal magic armor set. Zero Wing? A power above hegemons? This revelation stunned Illusory words for a long time. If Zero Wing truly stood above upper-ranking hegemonic powers, the 100-Flower Palace, the Star Alliance, and Phoenix Rain's decision to go all out on Zero Wing would no longer be an illogical one. Why don't you join Zero Wing as well, Big Sis Illusory? Phoenix Rain asked when she saw the pondering look on Illusory words. You'll be subjected to the Dragon Hunting Temple's management if you follow Elder Mist. With such a restriction, it is highly improbable that Crimson Emperor can prosper outside of our god's domain. You'll also have a hard time improving yourself any further. Now that the Tier 6 Alliance had subordinated itself to the Dragon Hunting Temple for protection, it went without saying any valuable resource the Tier 6 Alliance acquired in the future would go to the Dragon Hunting Temple. As for the Tier 6 Alliance's members, they'd be fortunate if there were even scraps left for them. This, Illusory words, was a little tempted by Phoenix Rain's proposal. However, before Illusory words could give her an answer, 9 Dragons Emperor suddenly shouted for her from a distance. Illusory. We have only been given one chance. If you don't want to end up like Phoenix Rain, hurry up and gather here. When Illusory words heard 9 Dragons Emperor calling for her, she quickly dismissed her thoughts of joining Zero Wing. Unlike Phoenix Rain, the restraints on her were much heavier. After all, she did not have the support of any corporation or shareholder of Crimson Emperor. Her decision to join the Tier 6 Alliance was even made against the wishes of Crimson Emperor. Because of this, Crimson Emperor's several vice guild leaders were watching her closely, eagerly waiting for her to slip up. What a pity. Phoenix Rain couldn't help but sigh when she saw Illusory words leave her side. Dungeons were a crucial source of weapons and equipment for the various powers, and the 2 most important roles in a dungeon raid were the tanks and healers. As a Tier 6 cleric god and one of God's domain's 10 great clerics, Illusory words could reduce the difficulty of any team dungeon by a large margin so long as she had a sufficiently strong tank standing before her. It was also why, despite tasking the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion to raid the Taboo Mode ruined temple on its behalf, the Dragon Hunting Temple still included Illusory words in its team. No need to feel unfortunate, Shifeng said nonchalantly as he looked at Illusory Word's departing figure. She will soon learn that joining Zero Wing will be the best option, even if it means making an enemy out of all powers in God's domain. As soon as Shifeng finished speaking, the ruined library's entrance portal also became fully unsealed. Follow current novels on tarpnovelful.com if you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3634, Chapter 708, The Price of Taboo Mode. Chapter 3634, Chapter 708, The Price of Taboo Mode. Chapter 708, The Price of Taboo Mode. Ruined Temple, Ruined Library. When the 1,000-meter-tall portal bloomed with dazzling brilliance, the magic runes responsible for sealing it dissipated completely. Almost simultaneously, the several 100,000 players gathered in front of the portal went into a frenzy. Charge! The Taboo Dungeon's first clear is ours. The many 100-man teams in the plaza charged into the portal one after another frantically, all of them aiming to secure the ruined library's first clear and become the pioneer of the new era in God's domain. However, whether it was the various Superpowers teams or the foreign Tier 6 teams, none moved from where they stood. They merely observed all of this happening, behaving like they didn't care about the ruined library's first clear. Imbeciles. Do they think a Taboo Dungeon's first clear can be easily acquired? The one-eyed middle-aged guardian knight from the dragon hunting temple thought contemptuously as he watched the teams swarming the ruined library's entrance portal. Taboo dungeons were considered gold mines, even in the greater God's domain. However, not just any power could harvest these gold mines. This wasn't to say that certain powers had monopolized taboo dungeons and forbade others from entering. On the contrary, although apex powers had indeed occupied some of the known taboo dungeons in the greater God's domain, they would gladly welcome anyone to enter their taboo dungeons if the other party was willing to pay a fee of 50,000 units of 7 luminaries crystal or treasures of equivalent value. They would even welcome their enemies with open arms if they were willing to pay up. Of course, these apex powers weren't doing so wasn't out of generosity, and neither was it because they didn't care about the items inside taboo dungeons. Instead, it was because of the great difficulty of raiding taboo dungeons and the extreme cost of deaths inside taboo dungeons. If players died inside a taboo dungeon, they wouldn't simply lose some EXP and items. They would also lose a portion of their immortal souls. During the advent of taboo dungeons, players never noticed the damage to their immortal souls when they died in a taboo dungeon. This was because the portion they lost on each death was barely perceptible. However, as players started to experience more deaths inside taboo dungeons, they eventually noticed the subtle death penalty in taboo dungeons. But even then, players didn't care about the loss as it was so minuscule that it did not affect their normal development. That was, until one day, a main force member of a particular power lost an accumulated total of 10% of his immortal soul while raiding taboo dungeons. Upon hitting the 10% threshold, said player suffered a permanent death, and the news dumbfounded the various powers back then. Under normal circumstances, if players lost only 10% of their immortal souls, they wouldn't even see any impact on their skill and spell usage. Yet, a player had suffered a permanent death after losing just 10% of their immortal soul to taboo dungeons. This discovery frightened the greater God's domain's various powers. As a result, none of the various powers dared to recklessly allow their teams to raid taboo dungeons from then onward. Meanwhile, based on past successes, a team would have to be fully composed of Tier 6 experts equipped with fragmented legendary equipment sets to successfully raid taboo dungeons. Moreover, these were only level 210 taboo dungeons. In the case of level 210 plus taboo dungeons, each team member would need to have at least 1 or 2 pieces of legendary equipment. Otherwise, the chances of success would be near non-existent. As luck would have it, the ruined temple was a level 210 taboo dungeon. It was the greatest difficulty conglomerates and upper-ranking hegemonic powers like the dragon hunting temple were willing to challenge. Not to mention, the ruined temple's first clear reward remained available, and there was no need to pay an entrance fee since nobody had laid claim to the taboo dungeon yet. Hence, they were willing to pay the price of sending some members through the world gate before it opened to descend upon this God's domain. However, rather than blindly charging into the taboo dungeon like the native teams, What they should do first and foremost was to wait. Whenever a new taboo dungeon appeared, it was standard for the various powers to send numerous reconnaissance teams to gather as much information as possible. Never would they send their main forces into a taboo dungeon blind. After all, the main force members of any power were highly valuable and would require a lot of time to replace. It was especially so for peerless geniuses, as the loss of such geniuses could take years, decades, or even centuries to recover from. As for why they had shown up so early, it was to detain and interrogate any natives who came out of the taboo dungeon. The crowd is gone. How are your preparations coming along? Shifeng asked Phoenix Rain when he saw the mostly empty plaza. After sweeping her gaze across her teammates, Phoenix Rain nodded and answered, "We are ready to go." "Okay, let's head inside, then," Shifeng said before entering the ruined library with Phoenix Rain, Ji Luorong, and the others. "You are doomed for sure, Phoenix Rain." When Nine Dragons Emperor saw Phoenix Rain entering the ruined library, he couldn't help but smirk. This was the first time a taboo dungeon had appeared in their god's domain, so there shouldn't be anybody from their god's domain who knew about the cost of taboo dungeons. If not for the dragon hunting temple, Nine Dragons Emperor wouldn't have known about the horrors of taboo dungeons, either. Meanwhile, knowing Illusory Word's relationship with Phoenix Rain, Nine Dragons Emperor had deliberately kept this information from Illusory Words. So, by the time Phoenix Rain notices the damage to her immortal soul, she should only be a few deaths away from a permanent death. Follow current novels on tarpnovelful.com if you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 36-35, Chapter 709, One-Man Legion. Chapter 36-35, Chapter 709, One-Man Legion. Chapter 709, One-Man Legion. After crossing the portal, Shifeng and his team were teleported into a corridor covered in thorny vines and lined with stone statues. Then, upon getting a good look at their surroundings, Ji Luorong and the others couldn't help but gasp. Is this supposed to be a taboo dungeon? Phoenix Rain was flabbergasted as she looked at the divine runes engraved on the walls. Not only did these divine runes suppress her mental state and physique, but they also weakened her control over her body and mana. Despite being a Tier 6 player, Phoenix Rain currently felt that she was only slightly stronger than Tier 5 legendary monsters of the same level. If even she was suppressed to such an extent, she couldn't even begin to imagine what would become of Tier 5 players in this dungeon. Not to mention, there were also the 100+ demon statues that lined the sides of the corridor. At first glance, they might look like inanimate statues, but closer inspection would show that they were bona fide level 208 count-ranked demon kings. Among them, there were also 6 100-meter-tall demon statues that were level 210 Marquis-ranked demon kings. Unlike humans, demons inherently possessed extraordinary 5 senses and control over mana. Even the lowest-ranking demon could put up a good fight against human NPCs of the tier. As for count-ranked demons, they could rival 4-winged Valkyries of the same tier, and it should be known that Tier 5 4-winged Valkyries were existences that could give even Tier 6 players a difficult time. Yet, there were over 100 such existences in this corridor, and this was only the starting point of the taboo dungeon. As for Marquis-ranked demons, they could rival 6-winged Valkyries of the same tier, and defeating a Marquis-ranked demon king would require at least a 100-man Tier 5 team led by one Tier 6 player. We are quite lucky. We got teleported to the exhibition area instead of the curse area, Shifeng said, sighing in relief when he saw the demon statues lining the corridor. You consider this lucky? Ji Luorong couldn't help but look at Shifeng dubiously as she pointed at the 6 100-meter-tall demon statues in the distance. Guild leader, those are level 210 Marquis-ranked demon kings. Just one of them is enough to hold back our entire team. We are indeed lucky. Had we started from the cursed area, we would have had to give up before we could even start, Shifeng said, chuckling. The ruined library might have been upgraded into a taboo mode dungeon, but the only thing that changed was the addition of divine runes that suppressed players. Meanwhile, based on the information he heard of the ruined library in his previous life, players would be randomly teleported to one of 3 starting areas when they entered the dungeon, specifically the exhibition area, the cursed area, and the courtyard area. Prior to the upgrade, although each of these 3 areas housed monsters of a different type, there wasn't any notable difference in overall raid difficulty. However, after the ruined library became a taboo mode dungeon, the cursed area would undoubtedly become the deadliest of the 3 areas. The cursed area's monsters were evil spirits, and attribute-wise, they were the weakest out of all monsters in the 3 starting areas. However, their weakness was compensated by the fact that the cursed area would curse all players in it, drowning them in darkness and restricting their vision range to just 1 yard. And as evil spirits did not have a fixed form and could move without making any sound, players would have a very difficult time reacting to them. In comparison, while the exhibition area's demons might have powerful attributes, neither they nor the environment placed any restrictions on players. Meanwhile, following the addition of the divine runes, players would have their mental states suppressed while in the dungeon, which would prevent them from mentally perceiving their surroundings. If their vision was restricted on top of that, unless they had reached the extrasensory realm, they could forget trying to block any attacks from monsters. They were almost certain to get hit by any monsters that targeted them. In God's domain, unless players possessed a tier advantage, they would receive significant amounts of damage if monsters landed a direct hit on them. Even tank classes could not survive more than a few direct hits from monsters of the same tier and level, let alone other classes. What should we do next, guild leader? Phoenix Rain asked, frowning after she finished scrutinizing the corridor's situation. Although the terrain here is cramped, there is still too much space for us to create an effective choke. And even if our Tier 6 can hold back those 6 marquises, our Tier 5 tanks can, at best, hold back 2 or 3 counts each. We simply don't have the numbers to hold all the counts at bay. The basic attributes and mana of their team's Tier 5 members might be close to reaching the Tier 6 standard, but under the Divine Rune suppression, only the tanks would stand a chance against the level 208 count-ranked Demon Kings in a one-on-one fight. Not to mention, the demon statues outnumbered their team. We don't have to go through such trouble to deal with these demon statues, Shifeng said as he scanned his surroundings. I will distract these demon statues, while the tanks will stop any that manage to slip by. As for everyone else, just focus on doing damage. If he was still at Tier 5 right now, he'd have no way of successfully raiding the taboo mode ruined temple with his current team. Fortunately, he now had basic attributes rivaling level 200, Tier 6 gods. His basic attributes were superior to even level 210 divine monsters, let alone level 210, Tier 5 demon kings. Before Phoenix Rain and the others could say anything, Shifeng unsheathed the Winter of Eternal Night and activated World of Frost, summoning 100 frost swords that carried 300% of his strength. Then, he charged forward and initiated the attack on the demon statues. With his mental state suppressed heavily, Shifeng could not execute combat techniques with his frost swords. However, because of his overwhelming strength, each frost sword could easily shatter even the Tier 5 curses of the Marquis-ranked Demon Kings. In just the first exchange, all the count-ranked Demon Kings were sent flying all over the place, and each saw a small chunk of their HP bars vanishing. Although each count-ranked Demon King had over 100 billion HP, they lost over a billion when struck by Shifeng's frost swords. As for the Marquis-ranked Demon Kings, they were sent stumbling by Shifeng's attacks, and each of them lost over 100 million HP. A one-sided exchange. It was an absolutely one-sided exchange with overwhelming strength. In fact, before anyone else could take action, the count-ranked Demon Kings had already lost 10% of their HPs. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Shifeng could eliminate all of the count-ranked Demon Kings without any help. Is he really just a level 178, Tier 6 swordsman? Ji Luorong couldn't help but be dumbfounded as she looked at the 100 frost swords Shifeng manipulated. Previously, Shifeng's performance when he annihilated the Flower of Seven Sins members was already incredible. Even so, it paled in comparison to his current performance. Anyone could tell that the ruined library's monsters were tough opponents. Even a 100-man Tier 6 team should need significant time and effort to eliminate a group of demon statues. Yet, these demon statues were no different than cannon fodder in front of Shifeng. He could kill them however he wanted, and none of them could resist. At this point, Ji Luorong even suspected that, if given enough time, Shifeng could conquer the entire taboo dungeon by himself. We should join the fight as well, boss. Otherwise, the guild leader is going to take care of all these monsters by himself, Crimson Mist said before she charged at one of the Marquis-ranked demon kings. Compared to Ji Luorong, Crimson Mist was much less fazed by Shifeng's current performance. After all, she had already seen Shifeng suppressing a group of monsters in the ruined mountain range's inner area without lifting a finger. That was a much more shocking scene in comparison. Subsequently, Shifeng and the others quickly dispatched the demon statues. When one of the Marquis-ranked demon king's corpses turned to dust, it left behind a dark blue armguard covered in ancient divine runes, the armguard's appearance momentarily freezing the space around it. We got a drop already? When Shifeng saw the dark blue armguard, a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. TL Notes. 1. Demon King. Note that Demon King is the term used to refer to Tier 5 demons. Tier 3, Demon Tier 4, Great Demon Tier 5, Demon King. Follow current novels on tapnovelful.com. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3636, Chapter 710, God Chaser Set. Chapter 3636, Chapter 710, God Chaser Set. Chapter 710, God Chaser Set. What is this equipment? How can it seal space in its natural state? Looking at its glow effect, it should only be a piece of epic equipment. You'd rarely find space-restricting hidden abilities, even among legendary equipment. How can a piece of epic equipment have such an ability? Everyone had their curiosity piqued when they saw the effect the dark blue armguard exerted on its surroundings, and they couldn't help but wonder about the armguard's actual quality. Is it really just a piece of epic equipment, guild leader? Ji Luorong asked when she saw Shifeng starting to appraise the armguard. Then, she continued in astonishment, the instant that armguard appeared, I felt myself frozen in place momentarily. The only other item that has given me such an experience before is the Burning Sun Bow, and that's one of the 10 great legendary weapons owned by that old monster from mythology. There's no way something with a similar hidden ability is only at the epic rank. The Burning Sun Bow was one of God's Domain's 10 great legendary weapons, and it had a hidden ability that allowed its user to briefly lock down the surrounding space of their targets. Even so, the Burning Sun Bow's hidden ability could only come into effect when a player equipped it. Yet, despite being unequipped, the dark blue armguard momentarily froze everyone present. And if it could already exert such a powerful effect while in an unequipped state, how powerful would it become when equipped by a player? At this time, Phoenix Rain, Shadow Flower, and the others also looked at Shifeng curiously. This armguard is indeed at the epic rank, Shifeng said, nodding after he finished appraising the armguard. Then, he joyfully continued, but this isn't any ordinary epic armguard. Instead, it's the armguard piece for the God Chaser set, a level 210 epic equipment set. It's only a level 210 epic set? Phoenix Rain and the others were visibly disappointed when they heard Shifeng's answer. A level 210 epic equipment set could match a fragmented legendary equipment set in basic attributes, and it could indeed be considered top-tier equipment in their God's domain. However, once the world gate opened, such a set could no longer be considered top-tier. Don't be so quick to discount it, Shifeng said, shaking his head and chuckling when he saw everyone's disappointed looks. The God Chaser set might only be a level 210 epic equipment set, but when all 8 pieces are gathered, the set can be leveled up to 220 and grant basic attributes rivaling a full set of legendary equipment. Moreover, the 8-piece set effect also reduces the level requirement to level 200. Even in the greater God's domain, the God Chaser set can be considered top tier. In his previous life, the God Chaser sets produced by the ruined temple were only level 200 dark gold equipment sets. Even after gathering all 8 set pieces, the basic attributes players could gain from the God Chaser set was similar to what they would get from being equipped with a full set of fragmented legendary equipment. Honestly, when Shifeng learned of the God Chaser set in his previous life, he couldn't help but find the information on the set exaggerated. After all, according to the information extracted from the ruined library, the God Slayer had personally crafted the God Chaser set, and it was described to be able to give humans strength to combat gods. But if the God Chaser set only provided similar basic attributes as a full set of fragmented legendary equipment, there was no way it could let humans fight gods of the same level and tier. However, after seeing the epic-ranked God Chaser set, Shifeng realized the information wasn't exaggerating matters after all. Instead, it had just been referring to a different God Chaser set. Another thing that surprised Shifeng was the epic God Chaser set's drop rate. Normally, the drop rate in taboo mode dungeons was abysmal. This was true even for newly discovered taboo mode dungeons. So, he was greatly surprised when he saw a set piece for the epic God Chaser set dropping from the first group of monsters they killed. If it can rival a full set of legendary equipment in basic attributes and be worn at level 200, anyone who equips the full set will be nigh invincible, even after the world gate opens, Blue Phoenix exclaimed. Even for the 5 great superguilds, it would be an absolute extravagance to fully equip a player in legendary equipment. So, if a player could equip the full God Chaser set, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to consider them invincible in God's domain. According to the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's understanding of the world outside of their God's domain, it was similarly difficult for powers to fully equip a player in legendary equipment. Even if there were powers who could afford to do so, there wouldn't be many. In that case, we should eliminate as many demon statues as we can while advancing. It'll be a jackpot for us if we can gather a complete set, Ji Luorong said with sparkling eyes. If Zero Wing could add a nigh invincible expert to its ranks, it would serve as a huge motivation to guild members and a powerful deterrence to enemies. This was an effect that could not be achieved normally, even with multiple Tier 6 experts. Immediately, everyone became much more enthusiastic about killing demon statues. However, due to Shifeng's skills being a limiting factor, they had to rest for a few minutes before they could proceed with the next battle. This led to the team's progression being rather slow. To make matters worse, the drop rate was relatively low. After 6 hours of hunting, even with Shifeng having consumed an elixir of fortune, the team only obtained 31 pieces of equipment, of which only 13 were set pieces for the God Chaser set. Moreover, most of them were duplicates. While Shifeng and the others were hard at work, a commotion occurred outside the ruined library. In the past 6 hours, several 100,000 players, amounting to several thousand teams, had entered the ruined library. Some teams faced deadly traps, some faced demon statues, and some faced evil spirits. However, regardless of which challenge they faced, over 99% of these teams died before they could even make it past the first group of traps or monsters they faced. Even teams led by Tier 6 players had faced annihilation. The difficulty of the taboo mode ruined temple was truly unprecedented. As expected, none of these wastrels are useful, the one-eyed middle-aged guardian knight from the dragon hunting temple scoffed when he read the intelligence 9 Dragons Emperor gathered. Then, he looked toward 9 Dragons Emperor and commanded, "Tell Hidden Mist to gather all of the Tier 6 Alliance's Tier 6 players and have them explore the ruined temple. Have them get ready to transfer the promised real estate as well. The Dragon Hunting Temple will send someone to complete the handover procedures tomorrow. Only the Tier 6 Alliance's members will be going in." 9 Dragons Emperor couldn't help but be shocked. "That's right. Do you have a problem?" the one-eyed guardian knight coldly asked. "No, but even if Elder Mist agrees to it, I don't think we can gather much information with just so few of us," 9 Dragons Emperor hurriedly said. "You just need to gather as much information inside the dungeon as possible. I don't need you to die more than a few times," the one-eyed guardian knight said as he looked at 9 Dragons Emperor's worried expression. Then, he pointed at the 2 other foreign teams, who were in the midst of apprehending Tier 5 and Tier 6 experts, in the distance and coldly smiled, saying, "You should be thankful you are partnered with the Dragon Hunting Temple. Otherwise, you'll probably have the same fate as those people, having to explore the taboo dungeon until you're gone for good. I'll get it done right away." When 9 Dragons Emperor saw the 2 foreign teams capturing the various powers Tier 6 experts outside the ruined library, he dared not hesitate any longer. Meanwhile, when Illusory Words, who had hidden her identity with a black cloak, saw the scene outside the ruined library, she couldn't help but shudder. Just a moment ago, she saw the 2 foreign teams capturing several joint teams formed by over a dozen native superpowers, and among those captured were Crimson Emperor's Tier 6 experts. Then, these foreign teams forced the players they captured to explore the ruined library, and those who refused to comply were repeatedly killed until they fell back to level 0. How did things come to this? Follow current novels on tarpnovelful.com if you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 36-37, Chapter 7-11, God's Domain's Calamity. Chapter 36-37, Chapter 7-11, God's Domain's Calamity. Chapter 7-11, God's Domain's Calamity. Redstone Hotel, top floor VIP room. The time currently was late in the evening. The sky outside the top floor VIP room was pitch black, and few cars and pedestrians could be seen on the street below. Despite this, the room was brightly lit. At this time, the round table that could easily accommodate more than 30 people was fully seated. Among the Tier 6 Alliance's members, there were also about a dozen or so other individuals present in holographic form. If any of these individuals were to appear in a crowded location, almost everyone would recognize them immediately. Sinful Flame, a legendary individual from the superpower Azure Chamber of Commerce. Melancholy, the guild leader of the Super Guild 13 Thrones. Silent Soul, the guild leader of the superpower Unyielding Soul. Half Madness, one of the 10 Saints and a member of the Super Guild Battle Wolves. Every one of these individuals was a big shot in God's domain. Currently, though, all of them wore indescribably grim looks on their faces. So, going by your words, we don't have any other choice, Elder Mist. Melancholy, a giant of a man over 2 meters tall, asked angrily as he looked at the bearded Hidden Mist. That is correct. This is already our best option, Hidden Mist said, nodding somewhat helplessly. I believe all of you have already learned of the situation at the ruined temple. The allure the taboo dungeon holds to the foreign power has far exceeded our imaginations. Not only have they captured the Tier 6 experts of over a dozen superpowers, but they are also going after the Tier 5 S-League experts. They have even gone as far as to force everyone to sign a God's Domain contract or face an endless cycle of death. 9 Dragons Emperor and Illusory Words have both witnessed this happen in person. They have also made a recording, so feel free to watch it. Right now, your only option is to join the Tier 6 Alliance, hand over all your real estate, and become a subordinate power to the Dragon Hunting Temple. Only then can you avoid suffering a worse fate in the hands of the 2 other powers. Upon hearing Hidden Mist's words, everyone couldn't help but fall silent. Powerlessness. At this time, everyone present felt a deep sense of powerlessness overwhelm their hearts. It should be known that the dozen or so native Tier 6 experts who had gone to raid the ruined library were all individuals that even they had to treat with caution. Yet, none of these experts could put up any resistance in front of the 2 foreign powers teams. Even the 5 great Super Guild's experts had barely managed to evade capture by promptly re-entering the taboo dungeon after exiting it. Otherwise, they, too, would have suffered a similar fate. It should be known that all of the foreign Tier 6 experts were merely pseudo-Tier 6 experts. Although their battle arrays could boost basic attributes, it did not change the fact that they couldn't manipulate the mana around them. Yet, their God's Domain's native Tier 6 experts could just barely win against these foreign Tier 6 experts in a one-on-one fight. Naturally, in such a situation, no native power could challenge the 2 foreign powers' 200 Tier 6 experts. Not to mention, these were only the advanced teams of the 2 foreign powers. Their actual armies would only arrive once the world gate opened. Signing a contract with the Dragon Hunting Temple isn't necessarily our only option. Amidst the silence, a sweet and crisp voice suddenly echoed across the round table, causing everyone to turn toward the source of the voice. What other options do you have, Vice Guild Leader Illusory? Sinful Flame from the Azure Chamber of Commerce immediately asked in a somewhat excited tone. The only reason the Dragon Hunting Temple was willing to partner with their God's Domain's native powers was to establish a sturdy foundation for itself before the world gate opened. That way, it could nurture their God's Domain's native experts to raid the taboo mode ruined dungeon on its behalf. If not for this reason, it was unlikely the Dragon Hunting Temple would be interested in partnering with any native power. So, apart from becoming a subordinate of the dragon hunting temple, Sinful Flame found it hard to imagine what better options were available to their god's domain's native powers. Zero Wing. Illusory words said through her holographic projection. Based on my understanding, not only is Zero Wing superior to the outside world's hegemonic powers, but it is also providing excellent treatment to native experts and powers who join it. So long as we join Zero Wing, I believe we can survive this calamity. Even in the worst-case scenario, we should still be able to develop safely in our god's domain. Zero Wing? Superior to hegemonic powers? Nine Dragons Emperor, who was similarly attending this meeting in holographic form, laughed when he heard Illusory Word's statement. Has Phoenix Rain brainwashed you, Illusory Words? Are you going to toss your mind away after Phoenix Rain? I've already looked into Zero Wing, and it is nothing more than an upstart guild from our god's domain. Its acting guild leader is even the former guild leader of a second-rate guild only. Although Zero Wing has achieved good results in the miniature ancient world, that is only because the foreign powers have barely invested any strength there. How can you even compare the miniature ancient world situation with ours? Do you truly think Zero Wing can go against those foreign powers? The Dragon Hunting Temple is only willing to give us a chance because the World Gate has yet to open. If we lose this chance, we will all become slaves to the foreign powers once the World Gate opens, and we will have to spend the rest of our lives in that taboo dungeon. Upon hearing Nine Dragons Emperor's words, everyone's expression turned even uglier. They originally thought Illusory Words could bring them some hope, but it merely turned out to be despair. I don't know if Zero Wing can resist against the foreign powers. Illusory Words did not get angry because of Nine Dragons Emperor's rebuttal. Instead, she calmly said, but I do know that Zero Wing's guild leader has given Phoenix Rain 40 fragmented legendary equipment sets that come with a bronze battle array. I doubt any of our native powers can afford such generosity, right? In fact, how many foreign powers can replicate such an act? Impossible. Nine Dragons Emperor immediately cast doubt over Illusory Word's statement. Fragmented legendary equipment sets were incredibly rare to begin with, let alone those that came with a bronze battle array. Not even the Dragon Hunting Temple could take out 40 of such sets. If what you say is true, Vice Guild Leader Illusory, can Zero Wing ensure our independence and safety once we join it? Melancholy asked. At this time, everyone else in the room also looked at Illusory Words. Since Illusory Words dared to make such a claim, the matter regarding the 40 sets of fragmented legendary equipment sets must be true. It also showed that Zero Wing possessed an extraordinary foundation, and that it wasn't as weak as Nine Dragons Emperor described. At the very least, Zero Wing should be much stronger than any of their god's domain's native powers. The only problem now was whether Zero Wing could ensure their independence and safety. This, Illusory Words did not know what to say in this situation. After pondering for a moment, she said, I'm afraid I will need to consult with Rain first before I can give everyone an answer. Follow current novels on tarpnovelful.com if you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 36-38, Chapter 7-12, Godslayer's Treasury. Chapter 36-38, Chapter 7-12, Godslayer's Treasury. Chapter 7-12, Godslayer's Treasury. Ruined Temple, Ruined Library. As Shifeng and his team advanced deeper into the ruined library, the quantity and quality of demon statues they faced continuously increased. Initially, the demon statues only appeared in groups of 100 or so, but that number gradually increased to 200 and beyond. In addition, count-ranked demon kings appeared in greater numbers, and even duke-ranked demon kings had started to appear. These duke-ranked demon kings were close to rivaling Tier 5 dragons of the same level, and their appearance caused the progression of Shifeng's team to slow down significantly. We got lucky this time, guild leader. This duke dropped the boots for the God Chaser set. Ji Luorong said as she held up the pair of light blue boots she had just finished appraising, excitement and fighting spirit coloring her eyes. With this, we only need the helmet to complete the set. Apart from the astonishing loot, everyone was also able to improve their control over their enhanced mana after continuously clashing with the ruined library's demon statues. The improvement was especially obvious among the team's Tier 6 members, as Shifeng had tasked them with fighting the Duke-ranked demon kings they encountered in one-on-one situations. These high-intensity battles allowed them to improve their skill and spell completion rates rapidly. When using Tier 6 skills and spells, the average Tier 6 expert in God's domain could only achieve a completion rate of 80%. Even those who had reached the 4th floor standard could only advance their completion rate to 85%, enabling their Tier 6 skills and spells to exhibit 100% of their effects. Meanwhile, once a skill or spell's completion rate reached 85%, every subsequent increase would improve the spell significantly. If a Tier 6 skill or spell reached a 100% completion rate, it could exhibit as much as 200% of its original effects, allowing it to exhibit power rivaling Tier 6 taboo skills or curses. And if a Tier 6 taboo skill or curse achieved a 100% completion rate, it could exhibit power rivaling the attacks of ancient gods. In Ji Luorong's case, the highest completion rate she had achieved when using Tier 6 spells in the past was 87%, while her result with Tier 6 curses peaked at 80%. But after acquiring the Dragon's Fury secret treasure set and Bronze Mana purification technique and battling with them for 10 hours, she could already cast her Tier 6 spells at a steady 93% completion rate. Paired with the strength of her mana, her Tier 6 spells could already exhibit strength rivaling the attacks of Tier 6 gods. If she could stabilize her Tier 6 curses at an 85% completion rate, even Tier 6 gods would suffer against her if they did not use Tier 6 defensive skills or spells to defend themselves. In fact, Ji Luorong could already see herself achieving a 95% completion rate with her Tier 6 spells so long as she trained for another 10 hours or so. At that time, it would no longer be a dream to cast her Tier 6 curses at a steady 90% completion rate and fight against bona fide Tier 6 gods. Alright, everyone, rest up for 10 minutes. We'll be entering the collection hall after this, Shifeng said, chuckling when he saw Ji Luorong and the others looking eager to continue fighting despite having just concluded an intense battle. Although Shifeng indeed wanted Ji Luorong and the others to quickly adapt to their new mana, a taboo mode dungeon was not to be trifled with. Even with his current strength, he had to rely on his skills heavily to assist the team. If they tried to fight without his skills, there was a high chance they would get team-wiped. As a side note, Shifeng received an incredibly lucrative amount of EXP from the demon statues they felled because of his low level. After just 10 hours of grinding, he had already leveled up from level 178 to level 180, and his basic attributes were now at the standard of level 200, Tier 6 gods in the truest sense. So long as the Ruined Library's final boss wasn't a level 210, Tier 6 god, he was confident he could lead his team to victory. Guild leader. Something big happened in God's domain, Phoenix Rain exclaimed as she approached Shifeng with hurried steps. Some hours ago, the two foreign teams that have descended upon our God's domain suddenly started to capture Tier 5 and Tier 6 experts to do their bidding. The various powers are all panicking because of this, and several superpowers on Illusory Word's side are asking to join Zero Wing. However, they worry that Zero Wing might not be able to ensure their independence and safety once the world gate opens, so they hope for us to prove our strength. Should we agree? After Shifeng distributed the secret treasures and mana purification techniques to them, Phoenix Rain no longer worried about the foreign powers. With Zero Wing's current strength, it was more than strong enough to survive against even the foreign powers' armies. Now, she only wondered whether it would be worthwhile to let other native powers join Zero Wing. These foreign powers are acting rather quickly. Shifeng wasn't particularly surprised to hear the matter Phoenix Rain reported. Or, more specifically, it was only a matter of time before it happened. After all, native Tier 6 experts were the best tools to explore a taboo mode dungeon. There was no way these foreign powers would forego using these tools. Tell Illusory Words that they can either join us or get lost. Zero Wing isn't interested in begging others to join. Honestly, after recruiting Phoenix Rain's and Ji Luorong's groups, Zero Wing no longer needed Tier 6 experts. Whether it was Phoenix Rain's subordinates or Ji Luorong's Eternal Glory Adventurer team, both had many Tier 5 experts capable of advancing to Tier 6. They were merely lacking the right opportunity. Meanwhile, Shifeng would have no trouble letting these individuals advance to Tier 6 with the medium world fragment in his possession. In that case, why should Zero Wing go out of its way to prove itself to those seeking to rely on it? Did these people take Zero Wing for a charity case? Understood. Phoenix Rain nodded in agreement. A guild didn't need to have many members, especially not members who would pack their bags and flee at the first sign of danger. If the various superpowers weren't even willing to take the risk to join Zero Wing would be better off not having them as members. While Phoenix Rain was relaying Shifeng's answer to illusory words, Shadowflower's voice suddenly appeared in the team chat. I think I discovered a treasury, guild leader, Shadowflower said before sharing an image through the team chat. The image showed a golden door sealed by countless divine chains. Engraved on the door was a man holding a long sword fighting to the death, and below the man laid countless corpses of demons and gods. The God Slayer's treasury? Shifeng immediately got goosebumps when he saw the image. Very few records of the God Slayer existed in God's domain, but according to rumors, the God Slayer could slay gods despite having a mortal body. Moreover, these weren't just your average Tier 6 gods, but primordial gods. From what Shifeng uncovered in his previous life, the God Slayer initially appeared in a very distant era. It was so distant that none of the gods of the modern era existed back then, and some ancient gods hadn't even been born yet. During that era, existences that could be referred to as gods would be considered primordial gods in the modern era. According to rumors, the God Slayer had left behind many treasures across the greater God's domain to provide the human race a helping hand in times of danger. Meanwhile, the ruined library was one of the places rumored to house the God Slayer's treasure. However, Shifeng had never heard of anyone discovering the God Slayer's treasure in the ruined library in his previous life. However, the instant Shifeng saw the image Shadowflower shared, he was already certain of it. Hidden behind the golden door were undoubtedly the treasures the God Slayer had left behind. In Shadowflower's eyes, the engravings on the door might only be a depiction of a piece of ancient history. However, as someone who had learned the Goddess of Space's mana technique, Shifeng could tell that these engravings had a similar function to those found on primordial god tablets. In other words, someone had done the unthinkable and used a primordial god tablet as a door. After seeing such an extravagant gesture, Shifeng refused to believe that the God Slayer's treasures weren't behind that door. Follow current novels on tarpnovelful.com if you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3640, Chapter 714, Legendary Guard. Chapter 3640, Chapter 714, Legendary Guard. Chapter 714, Legendary Guard. Legendary? Can my personal guard become a legendary guard? Confusion appeared on Blue Phoenix's delicate face when she heard Shifeng's words. Although Blue Phoenix held Shifeng's strength in high regard, as Phoenix Rain's assistant and an expert who had nurtured personal guards for many years, she knew exactly how difficult it was to improve a personal guard's growth potential. It was especially so for epic guards, whose growth potential had reached 100 points. Of course, in exchange for the increased difficulty, every subsequent improvement a personal guard achieved in growth potential would also increase the growth rate of their basic attributes by a frightening extent. Take her epic personal guard, Dragon Knight Los Merin, for example. With 107 points in growth potential, Los Merin was undoubtedly at the top among their god's domain's epic personal guards. He could defend against attacks from even dragons of the same level and tier. This was also why the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion previously dared to challenge Minosa's trial. Meanwhile, to develop Los Merin's growth potential to such an extent, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion had expended all of the precious materials available in God's domain. At this point, it was unlikely their God's domain had enough materials to help Los Merin achieve even a 1-point improvement in growth potential, let alone advance to the legendary standard. After all, the minimum requirement for a personal guard to reach the legendary standard was 120 points in growth potential, and Los Merin was 13 points short of reaching it. No amount of manpower would be enough to gather the necessary materials to upgrade Los Merin into a legendary personal guard. Of course, he can, Shifeng said definitively. What is your personal guard's current growth potential? Normally, unless a personal guard was inherently an epic guard, upgrading them to the legendary standard was nigh impossible. Even in the case of natural epic personal guards, they would still require plenty of legendary and inferior divine materials to advance to the legendary standard. The total cost of such an endeavor was so expensive that most conglomerates wouldn't even be able to afford it. Only pseudo-apex powers and apex powers would be able to do so. Fortunately, Shifeng had previously raided the Nameless City's treasury and acquired over 30,000 bottles of divine water of life. So long as he was willing to pay the price, he could even produce an advanced legendary guard, let alone a legendary guard. He's currently at 107 points, Blue Phoenix said awkwardly. 13 points to go. Shifeng couldn't help but frown a little when he heard Blue Phoenix's answer. Then, he handed Blue Phoenix 3 bottles of divine water of life and said, "It seems we can only take a gamble." Although there was no limit to the consumption of divine water of life, only the first 3 bottles would yield the greatest effects. Afterward, every subsequent improvement would require the consumption of multiple bottles of divine water of life. He had only brought 241 bottles with him when he returned, leaving the remaining 30,000 bottles in Zero Wings Guild warehouse in the Eternal Realm. If the first 3 bottles failed to shrink the 13-point gap by a lot, the remaining 238 bottles would unlikely be enough to upgrade Blue Phoenix's personal guard to the legendary standard. An inferior divine material? Phoenix Rain couldn't help but be taken aback when she saw the divine water of life. Isn't this a little too extravagant, Guild Leader Black Flame? As the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's former guild leader, Phoenix Rain knew how much effort had gone into collecting the materials used to upgrade Blue Phoenix's personal guard. Among these materials, there were even several bottles of water of life, an incredibly rare and precious material in their god's domain. Only with these materials could Los Merin achieve a growth potential of 107 points. Meanwhile, the divine water of life was 100 times more precious than the normal water of life. It was so rare that she had only ever seen it being mentioned in history books. Yet, Shifeng was thinking of using such a precious material just to bet on the chance they could upgrade Los Merin's growth potential to the legendary standard. This was beyond extravagance. After all, the divine water of life's effects far surpassed that of the normal water of life. If these 3 bottles were used properly, they could bring Zero Wing 3 legendary guards. At that time, Zero Wing would be unstoppable in God's domain. So long as we succeed, everything will be worth it, Shifeng said to Phoenix Rain nonchalantly. Then, he looked at Blue Phoenix and continued, "Hurry up and have your personal guard drink them." This, Blue Phoenix was no fool. She naturally understood the divine water of life's value, so she couldn't help but look toward Phoenix Rain for directions. "Listen to the guild leader," Phoenix Rain said and nodded when she failed to spot any hesitation on Shifeng's face. After seeing Phoenix Rain's nod of approval, Blue Phoenix stopped hesitating and summoned her personal guard. Then, she had him drink all 3 bottles of divine water of life. However, she still couldn't help but grow a little nervous when she saw him drinking the precious liquid bottle after bottle. A moment after Los Merin consumed all 3 bottles, his aura suddenly changed. If before he was a lion cub, now he was an adult lion. He felt completely different from before, and he exerted an oppressive feeling on those around him. "What an incredible aura," Ji Luorong exclaimed as she looked at Los Merin. "He feels stronger than me already." Indeed. With such basic attributes, he should have no trouble clashing with a Tier 6 god, Shadowflower commented. Everyone marveled and rejoiced over Los Merin's astonishing transformation. Shifeng, however, frowned. "How many points to go?" Shifeng asked Blue Phoenix. Shifeng had encountered more than 1 advanced legendary guards in his previous life, let alone basic legendary guards. So, he knew how strong legendary guards were supposed to be, and Los Merin definitely wasn't one. In response, Blue Phoenix looked at Los Merin's statistics and gloomily said, "He still needs 3 more points." Los Merin's growth potential was currently at 117 points. He could already be considered the strongest epic guard in their god's domain. However, he was still far from reaching the legendary standard. In fact, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that unless Los Merin could gain access to more divine water of life, he would have zero chance of reaching the legendary standard within his lifetime. After all, even in the world outside of their god's domain, it was unlikely that there were treasures superior to the divine water of life. Only 3? Thank goodness. Shifeng sighed in relief when he heard Blue Phoenix's answer. Then, he took out another 140 bottles of divine water of life and handed them to Blue Phoenix, saying, "Have him drink all of these." Starting from the 4th consumption, a personal guard must consume multiple bottles of divine water of life to see any improvements. More specifically, the 4th consumption would require 10 bottles, the 5th consumption would require 30 bottles, the 6th consumption would require 100 bottles, the 7th consumption would require 300 bottles, and the 8th consumption would require 1,000 bottles. With the amount of divine water of life he had on hand, he could only upgrade Blue Phoenix's personal guard 3 more times. Fortunately, Los Merin only needed 3 more points. Even if each consumption only improved his growth potential by 1 point, he could still advance to the legendary standard without fail. That many? Blue Phoenix gaped in shock when she saw the 140 bottles of divine water of life. As for everyone else, they were similarly dumbfounded by this scene. It was especially so for Phoenix Rain, who had some understanding of the divine water of life. With 140 bottles of divine water of life, so long as one wasn't a fool and utilized them normally, it was entirely possible to rule over the entire god's domain. Yet, Shifeng was using all these precious materials just to create one legendary guard. Words such as insane and extravagant could no longer describe Shifeng's actions. What he was doing was no different than tossing a mountain of gold into the ocean just to see some waves. "Hurry up. The boss has already noticed us," Shifeng urged when he saw Eucharius suddenly opening his eyes. Hearing this, Blue Phoenix hurriedly had Los Merin consume all 140 bottles of divine water of life in one fell swoop. Boom! Immediately, a pillar of terrifying flames made of mana rose from Los Merin, and a mighty aura swept across everyone present. Los Merin's current aura was in a completely different dimension compared to before, and even Phoenix Rain and the other Tier 6 players present couldn't help but stumble multiple steps away from the personal guard. Success! Shifeng smiled when he saw this scene. Follow current novels on tarpnovelful.com if you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3641, Chapter 715, Legendary vs First Generation. Chapter 3641, Chapter 715, Legendary vs First Generation. Chapter 715, Legendary vs First Generation. So the rumors of legendary guards rivaling gods of the same level were true. A legendary personal guard. If those who chose not to leave the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion with Phoenix Rain learn of this, they'll probably die from regret. At this time, Ji Luorong and the other Tier 6 team members felt immense pressure from Los Merin. It should be known that Shifeng had previously given each Tier 6 member of the team a Dragon's Fury set and a Bronze Mana Purification technique, the combination allowing them to gain strength close to matching Tier 6 gods of the same level. Yet, despite their strength having improved so much, they still got the urge to run away when they stood before Los Merin, a level 212, Tier 6 Dragon Knight. It wouldn't even be an exaggeration to say that none of their god's domain's powers possessed anyone capable of contending against Los Merin. Even the 5 great super guilds were no exception. After all, even the strongest expert from the 5 great super guilds could only match level 200, Tier 6 gods. Said expert still had a long way to go to match level 212, Tier 6 gods. Alright, this is no time to be daydreaming. What is Los Merin's current potential? Shifeng asked, smiling as he looked at Blue Phoenix's dazed expression. Of course, Shifeng could understand the reactions of Blue Phoenix and the others. Any player would be surprised if it was their first time seeing a legendary guard. After all, the life rating and basic attributes of legendary guards were vastly superior to most Tier 6 players. It was especially so for legendary guards who were fully equipped with legendary items or several fragmented divine artifacts. In front of such legendary guards, Even Tier 6 players equipped with multiple legendary items would be no different than ants. Currently, although Los Merin was not fully equipped with legendary weapons and equipment, he still possessed incredibly powerful basic attributes. If he were to fight against the Tier 6 players of their god's domain, he would be akin to an adult fighting against a bunch of toddlers. He's at 121 points, Blue Phoenix said after snapping out of her daze. Not bad. He should have no trouble tanking the boss now, Shifeng said, feeling a little joyful as he looked at Los Merin. Then, he commanded, everyone, get ready. When Los Merin tanks the boss, everyone else should find opportunities to deal damage. However, never get greedy and try to get close to the boss. Once a personal guard reached the legendary standard, every subsequent 1-point increase in growth potential would increase their basic attributes by 10%. After factoring in their weapons and equipment, their overall strength would increase by an even greater margin. Although Los Merin had yet to complete his exclusive legendary guard quest and acquire a set of top-tier legendary weapons and equipment for himself, thanks to his growth potential, his basic attributes should be close to matching a 120-point legendary guard fully equipped with legendary weapons and equipment. Meanwhile, as soon as Shifeng finished issuing his command, Eucharius suddenly appeared within 300 yards of the team. At the same time, a staff embedded with 7 luminaries gemstones appeared in his hand. Foolish intruders! This is not a place where you belong. Eucharius waved his staff as he gazed down at Shifeng's team. Suddenly, a fourfold magic array that was several thousand yards in diameter appeared above Shifeng and the others. The magic array instantly drained the surrounding area of mana, causing all of the Tier 5 experts present to fall to their knees. Impossible. This is impossible. How can anyone quadruple cast the Tier 6 version of Dark Paradise? Is he a monster? All of the Tier 5 experts despaired as they looked at the fourfold magic array above their heads. Even Ji Luorong and Phoenix Rain, who were Tier 6 mage gods, were greatly frightened. What Eucharius had cast was the Tier 6 version of Dark Paradise. As it was a Tier 6 curse, even Tier 6 mage gods like themselves would normally take their time casting it. Otherwise, their skill completion rate would end up very low, and the effects their Dark Paradise could achieve would be terrible. Meanwhile, casting a fourfold spell was akin to casting the same spell 4 times. In the case of Tier 6 curses, quadruple casting them was such a challenging endeavor that it was outside the capabilities of even Tier 6 gods proficient in magic. However, the fact that Eucharius had cast a fourfold Tier 6 curse was still not the most frightening part. What truly frightened everyone was that Eucharius's fourfold Dark Paradise was cast with a 100% completion rate. Subsequently, a black ball of mana emerged from the fourfold magic array and descended upon Shifeng's team rapidly. The ball of mana erased everything in its path, and there was no doubt it could erase even the immortal souls of Tier 6 players should it be allowed to connect. However, halfway through the mana ball's descent, a brilliant radiance suddenly illuminated the sky. At the same time, Los Merin could be seen appearing before the mana ball with his shield raised. Just as Los Merin's shield was about to collide with the fourfold Dark Paradise, countless divine runes emerged from the shield, forming a twofold barrier that covered a 1,000-yard radius. Twofold Tier 6 super spell, Oracular Barrier, boom. For a moment, the land and the sky vanished as a powerful shockwave turned the space in a 10,000-yard into a dark void. The flood of mana that resulted from the collision of spells was so violent that it momentarily prevented the world laws from repairing the affected space. However, the two individuals in the sky did not stop their clash after the initial impact. Moving at a speed that even Tier 6 experts could barely perceive, Los Merin defended against Eucharius's spells using his shield while continuously trying to close in on the first-generation saint. Throughout this period, their respective law projections also clashed with one another. Although Los Merin could only ensure that a limited area was free from the influence of Eucharius's law projection, it was just barely enough to cover everyone from Shifeng's team. However, Eucharius was no ordinary boss. Not only did he prevent Los Merin from getting anywhere near him, but he also caused Los Merin to lose over 5 billion HP each time the other party blocked his spells. Even after becoming a legendary guard, Los Merin only had 70 billion HP. At this rate, It wouldn't take more than a minute for Los Merin to fall. All healers, keep Los Merin alive with everything you have. Tier 5s, find opportunities to attack with combination skills and spells. Shifeng calmly commanded, not at all surprised to see Los Merin being in a convincingly disadvantageous position. A legendary guard might rival gods, but first-generation saints were existences far superior to gods. After issuing his commands, Shifeng promptly activated his Tier 6 legacy superspell Sword Law World. Then, he joined everyone in attacking Eucharius. Although Eucharius was a first-generation saint who had mastered 3 advanced laws, Sword Law World still took full effect, weakening him by 30% in all aspects. As a result, Eucharius's maximum HP fell to 1.4 quadrillion, and his law projection was weakened by 30%. This change allowed Los Merin to gain the upper hand, and the Dragon Knight instantly appeared within melee range of the first-generation saint and dealt over 30 billion damage with a Tier 6 shield bash. He can close the gap now. What skill did the guild leader use? Isn't it overpowered? When everyone saw Los Merin finally landing a hit on Eucharius, their confidence no longer wavered. Split into 10-man groups and attack with large combination spells. Phoenix Rain was similarly excited by this development, and she promptly commanded her Tier 5 subordinates to attack Eucharius using large combination spells. Immediately, apart from the 14 healers, every other Tier 5 expert in the team started attacking Eucharius in groups of 10. Under normal circumstances, Tier 5 large combination spells could already exceed the average Tier 6 spell in power. Now that all of the team's Tier 5 members had mana rivaling Tier 6 players, the Tier 5 large combination spells they cast could rival Tier 6 curses, each attack causing over 10 billion damage to Eucharius. In just one volley, the team's 8 Tier 5 groups had dealt over 100 billion damage. Paired with Shifeng's attack, which dealt over 300 billion damage, they managed to put a visible dent in one of Eucharius's 12 HP bars. However, before anyone could celebrate, Eucharius's battle recovery kicked in, instantly replenishing all of the HP he had just lost. This sight plunged everyone into despair once again. Sure enough, the difference is still too much. Shifeng wryly smiled when he saw Eucharius's fully recovered HP. Although Eucharius had been weakened by 30%, his HP remained at a staggering value, and it allowed him to recover 28 trillion HP every 5 seconds. Under normal circumstances, even a 100-man Tier 6 team would be helpless against him. It seems I have no other choice. Immediately, Shifeng took out the Primordial Dragon Legacy Crystal and summoned Kalish's Phantom. This time, Kalish's Phantom was visibly stronger than the last time Shifeng had summoned it. The phantom of a 10,000-meter-tall dragon had even appeared with Kalish's Phantom. Meanwhile, after scanning the surrounding area, Kalish's Phantom revealed a look of surprise briefly before she pointed a finger at Eucharius. At the same time, the phantom dragon behind Kalisha opened its mouth and gathered a concentrated ball of energy in it. Then, it bellowed in the direction of Eucharius. Primordial Dragon Roar. Follow current novels on tarpnovelful.com if you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3642, Chapter 716, Primordial Dragon's Roar. Chapter 3642, Chapter 716, Primordial Dragon's Roar. Chapter 716, Primordial Dragon's Roar. Despicable dragon. This is not where you belong. When Eucharius saw the massive phantom dragon opening its mouth, his composure disappeared, and his expression turned gloomy. At the same time, a 7-colored radiance bloomed from his staff, and numerous magic arrays that spewed out divine runes appeared above him. In the blink of an eye, countless divine runes had wrapped themselves around Eucharius, making it impossible for even Los Merin to get within 1,000 yards of him. As for everyone else, their attacks were erased from existence as soon as they moved within 1,000 yards of the first-generation saint. This boss wasn't even taking us seriously this entire time? Ji Luorong couldn't help but doubt herself when she saw this sudden development. Previously, although Eucharius was strong, they could more or less damage him after Shifeng had weakened him. But now, their attacks couldn't even get within 1,000 yards of Eucharius, let alone damage him. The difference in strength was simply despairing. Meanwhile, a moment after Eucharius finished constructing his divine rune barrier, the gigantic phantom dragon suddenly bellowed. Immediately afterward, a grey beam exuding a boundless destructive aura struck Eucharius's barrier. However, unlike the attacks of Ji Luorong and the others, the grey beam did not get erased. Instead, it tore through the barrier like a thin sheet of paper and devoured Eucharius. Even then, the beam did not stop as it continued advancing and devouring the land behind Eucharius, creating a bottomless pit in front of the temple. As expected of one of the 12 sanctuaries' rulers. Not even a level 210 first-generation saint can defend against her attack. Shifeng couldn't help but be astonished when he saw Eucharius losing the left half of his body to the grey beam. It should be known that Kalisha was still not in her peak state. Yet, she could already exhibit such power with only her phantom. Although her primordial dragon roar did not outright kill Eucharius, it took away more than 10% of his HP and put him in a heavily injured state. This was a feat that even ancient gods would have great difficulty replicating. In fact, if Kalisha hadn't halted her attack after hitting Eucharius, Shifeng suspected she could put a hole through his home god's domain. How many more trump cards does he still have? When Phoenix Rain saw Eucharius being deprived of most of his combat power, she couldn't help but look at Shifeng in shock. Even though it hadn't been long since they started clashing with Eucharius, Phoenix Rain could already tell that the first-generation saint was an impossible opponent. They wouldn't stand a chance against Eucharius even if they gathered all of their god's domain's players, let alone fighting him with just 6 Tier 6 players. Under normal circumstances, their only option was to wait for death to claim them and pray they wouldn't get their souls annihilated. Yet, with only a single move, Shifeng had reduced Eucharius to a state where the first-generation saint couldn't even pose a threat to their team. We need to start attacking. We cannot let the boss recover his body, Shifeng commanded when he saw Kalisha's phantom disappearing. Once Eucharius's body fully recovered, even if he remained heavily injured, he could still exhibit combat power rivaling Tier 6 gods of the same level. With his absurdly high HP, even if he didn't have combat recovery, he could slowly whittle them to death. Hearing Shifeng's command, Phoenix Rain and the others understood this was a precious opportunity and promptly resumed their attack on Eucharius. Immediately, Phoenix Rain, Ji Luorong, and Purple Eye activated a Tier 6 Berserk skill and started casting Tier 6 curses such as Dimensional Spirit Blade, Skyfire Thunderspear, and Meteor Explosion. Although none of these Tier 6 curses were known for having astonishing power, they were the Tier 6 curses that the trio were most proficient in. For example, Phoenix Rain could control up to 100 dimensional blades at a time, Ji Luorong could control several hundred thunder spears at a time, and Purple Eye could control over 1,000 meteors at a time. Before their mana dried up, they could attack endlessly with these Tier 6 curses. Meanwhile, Shadow Flower and Crimson Mist activated their respective doppelganger skills, with Shadow Flower splitting into 5 copies of herself and Crimson Mist summoning 2 copies of herself. Shadow Flower's doppelgangers possessed 100% of her basic attributes, while Crimson Mist's doppelgangers had 150% of her basic attributes. After doing so, they worked with Los Merion to negate all of Eucharius's attempts at launching a counteroffensive and allow everyone else to attack the first-generation saint freely. As for Shifeng, he activated Holy Mana's Shadow and World of Frost, transforming into a 20-meter-tall giant and summoning 100 frost swords to his side. Immediately afterward, he executed Sword's Orbit and launched a barrage of stars at Eucharius, each impact easily depleting nearly 100 billion of the first-generation saint's HP. After just one cycle of attacks, he dealt over 10 trillion damage to Eucharius, his DPS alone surpassing the combined total of the rest of his team. 87%. 50%. 20%. Eucharius's HP rapidly fell under everyone's fierce attacks. But at the same time, Eucharius gradually recovered his body and combat power. First, it was his left arm. Then, it was his left leg. As Eucharius recovered more of his divine body, he also shifted from using Tier 4 spells to Tier 5 spells to defend himself. When Eucharius's HP fell to 2%, he finally recovered his divine body completely and could use Tier 6 spells again. Immediately, he retaliated against Shifeng's team with a fourfold Tier 6 curse, overcoming Los Merin's defense with ease and obliterating 4 of the 10 Tier 5 groups. This turn of events shocked everyone. It should be known that Eucharius's heavily injured status was still in effect. Yet, he could still kill them with ease. It's over for you intruders. Die, all of you. After his initial retaliation, Eucharius coldly glanced at Shifeng's team before summoning 15 magic arrays around himself, each corresponding to a Tier 6 spell. However, at the same time as Eucharius had decided to rid himself of his opponents once and for all, Shifeng raised the shadow incinerator high into the air and swung down with it. Die. The end. Third sword, holy annihilation. Immediately, a towering pillar of flames rose from under Eucharius. Although Eucharius had promptly reacted to it by casting a Tier 6 defensive spell and summoning a barrier to protect himself, the crimson flames took only a second to burn through the barrier and envelop him. Meanwhile, following a scream of agony, Eucharius's remaining HP disappeared completely. System, congratulations. You are the first team to have conquered the ruined library. Dungeon rewards doubled. You will be teleported out of the ruined library in 2 hours. Follow current novels on tarpnovelful.com if you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.